Singapore 2025 Race Notes. Sabrina's Race Notes. Number 1. Carlos Sainz Recovery Drive. Carlos started from the pits in P18 and drove his tires for 52 laps on mediums. Near the end of the race, after diving into the pits for a tire change, he overtook 5 cars in 10 laps and finished P10. Impressive recovery. And it needs to be noted that this was truly a team effort, as Alex held up racers behind him, enabling Carlos to attack as he did. Number 2. Papaya rules. The chickens have come to roost for papaya rules. I can make an argument for and against, and I'll reserve that for deeper discussions in our monthly race review because we have more races to see their full implications. I will say, though, regardless of what happened in Singapore, I would hope that the papaya rules had a predetermined milestone where once the team clinched the Constructors' Championship, the rules would be altered. That would have been the fair thing in my mind. Once Constructors was won, the 2 drivers were free to race. If they didn't have a predetermined milestone, then I have to agree with Jake Boxall-Legg, who said, quote, "Now that the Constructors' Championship is secure, the kid gloves approach to the title can end. Norris and Piastri should have license to fight like that at every race. It's a championship battle after all. The polemics between right and wrong become increasingly blurred in that situation." End quote. Number 3. Hadjar's defensive driving. Hadjar did some great defensive driving against Alonso. Though he ultimately lost the positions, the defense was still good. I know Alonso called him out, but I think it's definitely something Alonso would have done had the roles been reversed. And keep in mind, Hadjar did that with power unit issues. Number 4. Berriman holds position. Berriman held his position in P9 considering the action ahead and behind him. I think that's really great. And those points came through his qualifying on Saturday, not so much the race. But either way, good job, Ollie. Number 5. Mercedes and Russell's stunning Singapore win. Wow. George and Mercedes really pulled out not only a fantastic pole lap, but what an amazing Grand Prix race win. George got a good start and just drove. The mental toughness of keeping that advantage should not be underestimated. The external factors of Singapore make this race so grueling. His excellent qualifying position allowed him the opportunity to focus on accomplishing the task. He had significant gaps between him and Max at various times, which allowed him the ability to make mistakes but not lose the race. I think the team should see his dependability and resilience as an asset. I also think Kimi did a great job finishing ahead of the Ferraris. For a rookie who hasn't been to this track, he held his own throughout. I know he's disappointed he wasn't up there with George, but I think he should feel good still. If he had had a better quali, things might have been different. But again, this was his first F1 race at Singapore. Let's expect more next year. As to Mercedes, winning a race at Singapore no less, like George, I have a healthy restraint in believing this is a complete overhaul at Mercedes that will somehow change the 2024 prospects. But I am hopeful. When I expected a race-specific win, I didn't expect it to be Mercedes at Singapore because their car just didn't seem attractive for this race. I did read, though, in motorsport.com, quote, "Why did Mercedes excel when it usually struggles in the heat? Despite the Singapore climate, track temperatures during the nighttime event weren't actually all that high, hovering around 33 to 34 degrees Celsius, while the street circuit didn't put high lateral loads through the tires, similar to Canadian Grand Prix, which Russell also conquered. And then there's the latest in a string of upgrades Mercedes brought, in the shape of a new front wing." End quote. I'm inclined to believe that explanation has merit. Number 6. Red Bull's soft tire gamble for Verstappen. Why did Red Bull start Max on softs for the race? Were they expecting a major clash? Maybe an attack between the 2 McLarens or even something midfield between Hadjar, Alonso, Hülkenberg, and Lawson. That would have allowed them maybe to have an early pit stop? Peter Windsor tried to wrap his brain around this too. He questioned the strategy. Was it a hope that softs would get Max ahead of George off the line? If so, the data didn't lend itself to thinking softs were a better advantage over the mediums. That said, I did see some people commenting that softs allowed Max to hold on to P2 since those on the dirty side of the track struggled to not lose paces when on mediums. Assuming Windsor is right, like him, I wish Red Bull had put Max on the mediums, as it would have given him a better opportunity on the dirty side of the track to maybe get ahead of George. And what a race that would have been if he had. The Red Bull and Mercedes fighting for P1. Can you imagine the strategy calls, overtake attempts? Man, what could have been? Instead, Max had to fight to maintain his P2. Not so much because of competition from his competitors. He did have some pressure from Lando at times, but really he was fighting his car. Verstappen struggled with the tires, understeer, downshifts. So when Max said P2 was the best possible for him, I have to agree, because his radio was shared quite a bit during the race, and it's clear to me he was struggling with that car. Number 7. Tsunoda's best and worst moments. Singapore was, in Yuki Tsunoda's own words, his best and worst moments. Lap 1 was horrible, and it was on the heels of his poor qualifying. That said, if he had done better in lap 1, the car actually had pace. I think that's because for the first time he had the same spec car as Max. So it's just unfortunate. I think it probably was more mental than skill. He knew how much was riding on lap 1, and he was in his head. It took him through at least turn 3 to recover, but by that point, he'd lost several places, a critical consequence at a track like Singapore. Number 8. Williams' disappointing disqualification. I am so disappointed for Williams after such a great week in Baku. That disqualification after quali for the DRS and rear wing issue. I have to hope they determined how their processes failed them and avoid repeating such an issue. I want to believe this was an unintentional error and not skirting the rules. That said, the fact that Williams didn't protest is interesting to me, as is the fact that both cars had the same issue. A charitable view is that a miscalculation was made on both cars. The politics and business side of the sport makes me wonder if there was a hope that they could get away with it, and that they would. Number 9. Where is Ferrari's pace? It wasn't too long ago that the team won this race with Sainz. So where is the pace for Ferrari? What is going on? Why aren't Ferrari able to keep up with their rivals? Charles stated in one of his post-race interviews that they were just passengers. I happened to catch a Content Careers aggregation of Charles and Lewis onboards, where you hear that both in different ways were given instructions to LICO, lift and coast. Charles for large chunks of the race, and Lewis mostly at the end. The communications were notoriously abysmal. But as I listened, I became frustrated for each of them. Having to lift and coast to address a car issue has to be infuriating at any point for a racer, but especially somewhere like Singapore. You're battling the external factors that are very specific to the track, and in both their cases, they're battling for high-value points. And now, rather than being able to push your car to the max and truly use your racecraft, you're having to lift and coast and defend? Initially, when I heard Charles's comments and watched the race, I was really perplexed. But after watching that onboard footage, now I understand how much more of a problem is occurring at Ferrari. This is something I wish the broadcast had shown during the race, but I'll expand on that later. About lift and coast. I watched a recent analysis that noted that LICO might be something all the 2026 cars will have to do more due to the implications of the new power unit regulations. So when I heard that, it made me wonder if the LICO experience at Singapore by the Ferraris is actually providing data for their 2026 development efforts. Number 10. Broadcast production. Focus on the racing. As to the broadcast production, I know I've praised it in the past, but I really have to provide critical feedback because it's impacting the racing viewer experience. I really don't need to see the driver's girlfriends sometimes multiple times during a race, especially when it means I'm missing things on track. I get the editorial decision to focus on the front pack, but if you find there isn't enough action at the front, why not show us things at the back? For example, Lewis and Alonso apparently had good engagement at some point in the race, but did I see it during the live broadcast? No. The incidents that resulted in the Saubers needing front wing replacements, did I see them live? No. Did I get to see Carlos battle his way into points? No. Did I get to see Alonso fight for points? No. Now, could any of these have happened when things were lively at the front of the race? Sure. I haven't spent time analyzing that, and I'm unlikely to do so. But what I do need to feel as a racing fan is that your focus of the broadcast during the race is on the race. Then, if you play me a replay, I will understand the editorial decision to focus on the front of the race. But my suspicion as a viewer is that there is some desire to focus on girlfriends and family for some reason. I will say that I feel like even the F1 TV commentators noted at some point that they knew something had happened but hadn't seen it on screen. It felt like a very diplomatic, gentle nudge to the broadcast team to get the video out. I realize the broadcast team is making a lot of editorial decisions in real time with a ton of literally moving parts. But the idea that we as viewers would prioritize girlfriends and family over the race seriously misunderstands the audience and its needs. You're welcome to show them during moments like the beginning of the race, when we're in a red flag situation, or even at the end of the race. But if the broadcast is the eyes and ears for the preponderance of the racing audience, i.e., those of us watching the broadcast, then please prioritize the racing. I also say this because if you prioritize the racing more, I think it will help both consciously and unconsciously in educating the audience better. When we see more of the race, then we have more understanding of the decisions, challenges, and solutions that the teams and drivers are making. If we had seen the Alonso versus Hamilton interplay, I think we would have had a better understanding of why Alonso was upset and the decisions related to Hamilton. The broadcast team needs to help us, as the audience, understand how and why the drivers are reacting as they are and any eventual calls the stewards might make. In a more, quote, processional, end quote, race, I can understand the approach to showing family and girlfriends, but this clearly wasn't that. There were places that had unusual overtakes and racers really battling. I think showing them as much as possible only helps the audience to respect the sport, not to mention the racers more. People who have only recently come to F1 might have more appreciation for Fernando if they saw his battling tactics during this race. They might be concerned for Lewis. He's an amazing talent. Why is he struggling with his brakes? And that the Ferrari maybe is having a situation that should be concerning. They might have more respect for Carlos. He's battled in a Williams to get into points in a way no one would have expected a year ago. And the reverse is also educational. When these racers make such interesting moves, we also learn from their competitors. Did they anticipate? Did they defend? How did that competitor respond? Especially in the back of the field where calculations may look different from those racers and teams at the front, there is a whole level of strategy in racing worth showing to the audience, particularly when they feel there is time to step away from the front of the race. Not to mention, there are so many rookies in the back of the field that we'd like to see how their racecraft compares and is developing over the races and the season. Dick's Race Notes with special guest Derek.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Two Guys, a Girl in F1. I am here with my son, Derek, and we are here today to speak a little bit about the Singapore Grand Prix and just kind of share our impressions of the race. Derek, welcome back.
Thank you. Believe it or not, we are not reviewing a movie tonight.
I know, amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so I felt like even though the Singapore race was pretty well decided after probably the first 2 or 3 laps in terms of the running order for the top 4. I thought it was a very interesting race from a strategy standpoint. Certainly there was a number of different strategies on play. And I must say I was surprised that some of the drivers were able to go a long way on the both the soft and the medium tires before they were, when they thought they were supposed to pit versus when they actually pitted. some of the drivers did an amazing job of preserving their tires.
Yeah, it wasn't, I think Lance, he went like, what, 38 laps on the or something like
Something like that. It was crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd never seen that before.
No.
But I think it just, it really shows you just how much the track surface, the temperature, all that plays into, the tire wear, really.
Right.
It's obviously the driver obviously makes a huge difference on, how hard are they pushing. And then, I'd say particular driving styles of drivers, is going to determine how, quick the tires go.
Yep.
Or how long they can make them last. But, it was a big, what you saw on Sunday really shows track surface and the temperature makes a huge difference on tire wear.
Yep, exactly. No, I agree. It was interesting to read the comments after the race. Mercedes, George Russell took a great pole position.
Yep.
And the lights went out at the start of the race, and he took off, got into clean air, and never really looked like anybody was going to challenge him. And
George is he's thinking twice though at the start of the race because he sees that number one Red Bull right behind him. So honestly, I was fully expecting Max to go straight for the lead and then get that clean air, as you mentioned too, and just go from there like Max always does. But no, George did an excellent job keeping Max behind him, and he took right off.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people have the theory that again, going back to the track condition and how it evolved in the tires. Mercedes seems to work better when the track temperatures are cooler. And while the track temperatures in Singapore were not exactly cool, they would probably be characterized as warm. It certainly wasn't hot because it didn't have the sun baking down on it.
Right.
And so some have postulated that maybe that's the deal. And Mercedes hasn't denied those theories, but they're sort of like, yeah, maybe, we're not really sure. I wonder for you, Derek, I kind of wondered if it was maybe a case of Mercedes putting it all together and everybody else maybe being just a little bit off.
Yeah, I think that there's that, but, I think there might be something to that theory, and I actually think that we'll have our answer in about a week.
Yeah.
Because, when they come to Austin next week, it is not going to be cool at all. So it'll be real interesting to see how Mercedes goes at Austin. If they're, and you look at the characteristics of COTA, different tracks, it's obviously, a proper racing circuit versus Singapore, which is a street circuit. But, there's similar aspects to it. There's a lot of high downforce corners and there's a lot of long straights. So, it'll be real interesting to see how the Mercedes goes at Austin.
Yeah.
When it's definitely going to be really hot.
Yep.
So, but, it seems like to me, there's been a few Grand Prix this year where Mercedes is really fast. I think, didn't Russell win in Canada?
Yes.
Yeah. And, if you look at the characteristics of that track in Singapore, they're very different.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, how is he fast on that day? I'm thinking, Canada, it's probably a little cooler, right?
Yeah.
So, there might be something to it. So let's see next week in Austin. It's going to be anything but cool. I've already looked at the forecast because, we're going to be there on Friday. And so it's just like, it's not going to be a cool weekend.
No.
So it's looking like it's going to be a hot one. So
okay.
I guess our theory is going to be tested here.
Yes, it will. And of course, if Mercedes drops an egg in Circuit of the Americas, and then a few weeks later shows up at Las Vegas where it's most likely going to be really cool, and they go out and destroy everybody like they did last year.
Yeah.
I think we have our answer.
We have our answer for sure. But I think the thing that surprised me the most was the performance of the McLaren. It's just, when I look at Singapore, I would expect that just to be a track that McLaren just dominates.
Yeah, certainly we went into the weekend and I was, you and I were talking about it and we were kind of like, I don't see anybody beating McLaren.
Yeah, I didn't either. And, I would say that it's kind of looking like it's, McLaren might be trying to beat themselves right now. Granted, they've already clinched the constructors, I believe.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So, but now it's, the drivers' championship is all on the line now. So it'll be real interesting to see. And we're starting to see it. It was, I think, what was it, the last race before this where Oscar and Lando swap positions.
Right.
And then
at Monza,
correct. And then here we are in Singapore, and they have their little altercation at the start of the race, and Oscar's, going crazy on the radio. He's not happy. And he was even asked, all right, do we swap positions now? And I think he had a legitimate question.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And, if I'm Zach Brown, I don't know how I manage that situation. And it may be, guys, you can race as hard as you want. From now on, there's no team orders, except don't crash and take each other out of the race.
Yeah. Well, that would be the most sensible way to go about it.
Yeah.
But, let's see how Zach handles it. I mean, of course, when we look at McLaren and their history, I mean, everyone goes to Prost and Senna.
Oh, yeah.
And and of course we had that year with Fernando and Lewis, and so it just seems like deja vu all over again for McLaren.
Exactly.
But with Prost and Senna and with Alonso and Hamilton, it was the same guy managing the team at the time. It was Ron Dennis, and now it's totally different leadership. So it'll be really interesting to see how Zach Brown handles this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's been a lot of question marks on how Ron Dennis handled those two different situations. So it'll be interesting to see how Zach handles this. I think, you always say that, winning solves everything. Having the fastest car makes your life easier.
Yeah.
But when you have two really fast drivers that are going for the world championship,
makes it difficult.
It makes it very difficult. So, that's one thing you can say about Red Bull. I mean, they've, at least last year they didn't win the constructors.
Yeah.
But you don't really have to worry about the number 2 guy ever competing with with their number 1 driver. So but ultimately those guys want to win both. So at the same time, you have to have that balance. It seems like you got to have your clear cut number 1, and then you got to have another guy that's getting on the podium, taking points away from the other guys, and then scoring enough points so they can clinch the constructors too.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Definitely getting a little heated there. I was today I was looking and I saw that apparently, I mean, this is such a rumor. I don't even know if I should, even give this thing any credibility, but I saw that they're saying don't be shocked if there's a surprise Oscar to Ferrari and the not too.
I saw that too.
Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I even saw a thing where Charles is even mulling like they're going to be talking to other teams. So, and, he's been with Ferrari his, pretty much his whole life almost. So it'll be interesting, but I don't want to get off topic here.
Yeah.
But anyway, so McLaren, I think, it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
So, Oscar still has a small lead. And, but, we'll see what happens. He's clearly getting, and that's one thing I really like about Oscar. He's a very calm guy, you can tell.
Yeah.
But that fiery competitor is now starting to come out.
Yeah.
I think he sees a world championship in sight. So at a very young age.
So
he, he's definitely, I would say, pretty fired up right now. And, him and Lando are going to be giving it their all these final few Grand Prix. So it'll be exciting.
Yeah, it will.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it will.
I did want to go back, though. I know I kind of jumped ahead, but, talking about Mercedes, did want to shout out Kimi. I know that he's kind of had a hard go of it lately.
Yeah.
And even Toto has come out and said, hey, we like what Kimi's doing. I think he's going to be a fantastic driver. I'm paraphrasing here, but he also said he needs to step it up a little bit. Yep. And he certainly answered the call. So
he really did.
He had a really good result.
All very clean weekend. Yeah,
very clean weekend. Yep. So I think we have to remember that the kid's only 19, and so I think that he's going to be really, really fast. I mean, he already is, but he's just going to keep getting better. So
agreed.
And he's in a great situation driving at Mercedes. I think as a young driver, that's probably where you want to be to develop your skills. So.
Yeah, for sure. He's certainly got a great team principal there who's behind him. So. I think he's in a great situation. Then we talk about Ferrari for just a minute. I mean, I don't know what's happened to him, but I mean,
what do you mean you don't know it? It's same old Ferrari.
Yeah, same old Ferrari. Yeah, maybe so. But I mean, a brake failure. I mean, Formula One cars don't normally have brake failure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really unusual. And yet here's poor old Lewis. It actually strung together a pretty decent weekend. He's clearly coming to grips with that car. And then he has brake failure.
Yeah.
It's just what's up with that?
Yeah, he's had a very unlucky season, I think. And I think a lot of it, obviously, what's he going to do about a brake failure? It doesn't matter if you're driving for Ferrari or driving for, I don't know, Sauber. Yeah, I mean, it makes no difference. There's nothing you can do about that. But, I think it really shows that you have to remember Lewis grew up in the Mercedes family. I mean, even when he was at McLaren, at the beginning of his career, I think the team was part owned by Mercedes at that time.
I think it probably was.
And, that's a good point. And then, of course, Mercedes goes and buys out Braun, and they become Mercedes, and Lewis goes there. So, I mean, he'd been in the Mercedes family since he was, 12 years old?
Yeah.
When Ron Dennis approached him and gave him that F1 contract when he was old enough. And, of course, if he hit certain performance standards, which of course he did, but I think it just shows that when you've been one place for so long, just adapting to a new environment, even going into a new facility, something unfamiliar, knowing everybody, and just I would say the routine that he's had the last almost 2 decades with one organization. So it's definitely been a transition for him. I fully expect Lewis, after having a season under his belt, to come back stronger next year.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And he's very motivated. I know a lot of people question it, but I think Lewis is extremely motivated. He wants to win a world championship with Ferrari, and that would be a pretty cool way to end, statistically the most successful career we've ever seen.
Yeah.
But I think too that, a lot of it's going to depend on what's Ferrari going to do next year. So, with the big rule change, is Lewis going to even have a shot? So,
right.
But I will be, you are right. He is coming to grips with this car. I don't think he's quite as quick as Charles yet,
right,
driving this car, but he out-qualified him, I believe.
I think that's
Singapore. Yeah. And so, I think he's getting closer and closer. He's getting more and more comfortable. And so I fully expect, and with Coda coming up, that's a track he's always loved.
That's true.
And so I'll be real interested to see how fast he goes at Coda. And I think people forget, at the Chinese Grand Prix, the second race of the year, he won the sprint race.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the dude can still drive.
Right. No, he's not forgotten how to drive.
He can drive on the limit, no doubt about it. But,
yeah.
I just think that it's one of those things where not only acclimating to a new team, but, there is something, I think, with his driving style where it just hasn't been the same Lewis that we've seen in years past, the brilliant Lewis, just because I think that this car, I think Charles, from what I've read, he likes to drive a lot similar to how Max does.
Mm-hmm.
Very sensitive car.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lewis is really having to adapt, but he's always been able to. I think he will. And, overall, he was running a really good race until he had brake failure. So.
Yeah, for sure. Which then leads me to my closing point. We got another minute or two to be able to talk about this, but there was a guy that won Driver of the Day.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and I
that's a big time award, isn't it?
It's it's not a win, but I mean it's still something.
I bet the guy that won Driver of the Day was thrilled that he won Driver of the Day.
Very well have been.
He probably jumped in the car and he was like, "Man, I hope I win Driver of the Day today." No, so obviously we're talking about, my man Fernando Alonso, who had a fantastic race and then did win Driver of the Day. I actually saw his quote about winning Driver of the Day. He said, well, sometimes you start 20th and finish 6th and you don't win Driver of the Day, and then you start 1st and finish 3rd and you do win Driver of the Day. So classic Fernando quote. And speaking of classic Fernando quotes, he had a lot of them over the radio during the race. It was very, very entertaining.
You might say he lit up social media.
Yeah, even Lewis was having a little bit of fun with it too. He, Fernando made his thoughts known about Lewis being on the track with brake problems there at the end. And so Lewis, he posted on his Instagram story on Monday, it was, basically what Fernando had said, and, was alluding to like, hey, this has been going on for 18 years now. So, Dad and I were talking about it earlier, and, hopefully they make a movie about those two at one point. So,
yeah.
But anyway, no, Fernando, I mean, just, it was classic Fernando drive. I mean, he's up to 5th, he's making his tires last long, and he was able to stay out, a lot longer and set some competitive times. And then he finally pitted, and I know I talked a little bit about Aston Martin earlier. Just it seems like they're always fumbling something with him, and they did it again. He had a 9-second pit stop, so he came back out 15th, and ended up clawing his way back to 8th, and was on Lewis's tail there at the end. Made a beautiful pass on Hadjar.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was like sideways, and he passed him. So I mean, it was it was classic Alonso. And then, of course, that's when the his little radio transmission about Lewis's brake problems went going after him and Lewis. He was chasing Lewis down there at the end, and you know what? He, I think, made a good point. Clearly, it was very fired up about it.
Yeah.
And so he got promoted to P7 because Lewis had that 5-second penalty. But I have to laugh because 2 weeks ago he's talking like, yeah, if the car's competitive next year and I have a good season, I think it'll probably be my last year because I want to go out on top. But, if the car's not as competitive as I hoped and we've got, I know we've got another year or two, and I'll probably stick around, because I don't want to, not be driving and then, the car get really competitive. And so I listened to him on the radio, and I'm watching the way he's driving on Sunday.
Right.
And I'm like, does it matter if the car is competitive or not next year? I'm pretty sure he's going to keep driving regardless if he's, the car's competitive or not.
There's a lot of fire there.
If he wins the world championship next year, I'd be shocked if he hangs it up. I think he's going to be sitting there like, man, I finally got a fast car. Let's go see how many I can get.
Yeah.
And I mean, I texted you today, he posted on his Instagram, he's at the kart track.
Exactly.
So I'm like, this doesn't seem like a guy that's anywhere close to retiring.
Right.
So all that to be said, he just keeps, and I would say that in the midfield, obviously we are keeping our fingers crossed that next year he's challenging for the championship. But he keeps things very exciting in the midfield now. So
he does. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, it was a great result for him and Aston. And he seems happy about the car. I mean, he said, hey, it was really fast today. So, another circuit where clearly a car that has definitely had its ups and downs this year.
For sure.
At this particular circuit with the particular temperatures, the Aston was fast. So, let's see what happens with them the rest of the season. But no, it was a great drive by Fernando.
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of wraps it up from our perspective on Singapore. We'd love, of course, to hear from our listeners as to what their thoughts were on the race. We've got Circuit of the Americas coming up here in about 10 days. And looking forward to making the run down to watch a little bit of F1 live. And going to grab Derek and his mom, my wife. We're going to go down, and your buddy David. We're going to go down there and see what it's all about.
Yep, we're excited for it. It's always fun when it's COTA time. So, and we'll get to be right there in the heat of Texas. That we don't say October, we say Hot-tober here.
That's right.
So
exactly.
So we'll get to see that Mercedes that we were talking about early on. Let's test our theory, and we'll come back and you can see the results for yourself, but we'll give you our analysis anyway.
Yeah. Don't be surprised if Mercedes wilts in the Texas heat.
Yeah.
How's that for a headline?
They might.
All right. Well, thanks for listening in, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Have a good one.